Welcome to r/slash Entitled Parents, where a mommy and her precious son point a gun at OP. Our next post is from Spartan with a Gun. This happened last week, so I'm trying to wrap my head around it still. Firstly, I love guns, nearly everything about them. The sound, the recoil, the fireball. What I don't like is when an idiot is given one. When idiots have guns, people get killed. So when I see an entitled parent and her 9-year-old son at a gun range, I was initially happy that this kid was being taught at a young age. I go to my bay, right next to the entitled parent and son, who was actually quite nice. When I see entitled parent's handgun pointed at me, so I jump out of the way of the barrel and tell her to keep it downrange. She scoffs at me, pulls the "not loaded" BS, to which I reply that I don't care, always treat it like it's loaded. I had two guns with me, my Springfield XD-40 subcompact handgun and my AR-15. Now continuing the story. The kid goes up to shoot, he starts firing, and when he's done, he sets the gun down so that it's pointing at me. Being a kid, and probably new, I tell him to always keep it downrange for safety. He acknowledges this and points the gun back when I feel a firm smack to the back of my head. "Don't talk to my son like that." I'm trying to teach him gun safety. If anybody gets shot at one of these ranges, this place can get shut down. "Don't talk back to me." She moves to hit me again, to which I hover my hand over my XD-40, which was resting on the table. That sends her enough signal to back off. When she goes up to shoot, she pulls the trigger, to which nothing happens. She points the gun at me again, to which this time I yell at her to keep it downrange. She decides to ignore me. "Ma'am, if the gun misfires, keep it downrange because it may have had a delayed firing." "Shut up, butthole." I go back to shooting my handgun, to which I see once again that the gun is pointed at me. The worst part, she was fiddling with the freaking trigger. To those who don't know, the rule is that you can point your gun at somebody if you feel they genuinely jeopardize your life. I wasn't quite there yet, so I called over range safety. Range safety told her off, and she listened until she did the same thing again. Now I point my gun at her. "What the F are you doing?" "Keep your gun downrange." Range safety comes over to calm me down, and he takes the gun from entitled parent. Then entitled parent tries to throttle range safety. So I take the gun from him and field strip it, disassembly in case of emergency. I noticed the safety was on, but the gun was fully loaded. So I point my gun at entitled parent and tell her to get on her knees with her hands behind her head. "I'll sue you for this BS." I say to the little kid, never say anything you've heard today until you're older. Then back to entitled parent, go ahead, I'll just show the camera footage. Range safety calls the cops, and when they arrive, I field strip both my guns. I get cuffed, asked a few questions, and then released to put my guns in their cases. Entitled parent is screaming bloody murder as she's taking away, and the kid is just crying. So then I go to the kid and try to calm him down. Entitled parent then screams that I'm trying to kidnap her son. I just back away and the kid is calmed down and just put my hands up. Cops close the car door and then they get contacts for the kid's dad. Still waiting for a court date. I will update you when I do get one. Nothing screams entitled parent quite like, "How dare you not let my precious baby almost murder you?" Our next post is from Acker1. My aunt was always playing the big shot of solving people's problems but using my cousin as the actual person to take on the problem. Always for free. If someone insisted on paying, entitled aunt kept the money. Need a babysitter, a ride, house cleaned, yard mowed, errands run? Oh, my daughter can do it. As far as my aunt was concerned, the only reason Emily existed was to cater to her. Emily was her ultimate trophy. Entitled aunt was entitled long before it became a huge thing. My aunt has always been entitled. It's her personality type. My mother couldn't stand her little sister, so we tried to avoid her while maintaining contact with her husband and child. My uncle, their brother, lived further south in the state, so we always tried to avoid Entitled Aunt knowing when we were visiting. On this trip, I was staying with my cousin for a couple of weeks in the summer and we were going to do tourist things. Entitled Aunt thought that the university not being in session meant that cousin was slave labor. One day, Emily decided that enough was enough. She was supposed to run errands for a friend of Entitled Aunt and had told her mother she had plans. Her mother, as usual, acted as though Emily had agreed and expected her to comply. Emily just didn't run the errand for the friend as demanded. It was that simple. My mother and I had arrived about 10 minutes before the phone rang. Entitled Aunt called, and though this was back during landlines, she was screaming so loudly that both my mother and I could hear both sides clearly. "How dare you embarrass me with my friends? You call Miss No Name and apologize immediately. You are grounded for a month and you may not drive the car at all. Now you make that call and go run those errands now." If anyone can explain how she was supposed to do this without using the car, I'd like to know. Emily said, "Mom, I'm 22. I do not live in your house. You do not pay my bills, and you do not own my car. Run the errands yourself. I have plans." My mom was a little nervous leaving us at that point. It's a mom thing, and a she has met her sister thing, even though we were both fine. She left just after meeting Emily's boyfriend. We left and went to a water park and a few other things. We got back to the house and were talking about where to have dinner. Mom insisted on paying for us to go someplace really nice for dinner that night. We get back and Emily's car is gone. She called and asked where it was. "Mom, do you have my car?" "Yes, I do. Your father brought me over so I could check and see if you had obeyed me. I told you that you were grounded and you were not there when I arrived. I'm keeping the car for a month, but I'm going to let Mrs. No Name borrow it because you have been so horrible to her." "Mom, that's stealing. I want my car back now or I'm going to report it stolen." "No, Mrs. No Name can't drive my car." "I'm your mother. What I say goes, Missy. You need to learn some respect and to get it through your head that I'm in charge and you are a child. You don't own anything. It's mine because I am your mother. The police will likely arrest you for wasting their time." Emily hangs up and looks at me. She is so angry she is crying in rage. "OP, if I call the police, she's going to know you are here." I can live with that. That fallout is a whole other story. She picks up the phone and calls the police, tells them the car has been taken without her permission and where it is. Mike, Emily's boyfriend, drives us over there. We do not want to miss the show. The police officers knock on the door and Entitled Aunt answers. "Hello, officers. Do you need something?" "Ma'am, the vehicle in the driveway matches the description and location of a vehicle reported stolen." "It's my car. I took it from my daughter because she is grounded from using it for being disobedient and disrespectful." "I see. May we have a word with her, please?" The Entitled Aunt looking very smug. "She doesn't live here." The police officer noticed us across the street. "You three, come over here, please." "Did one of you call us?" Emily said, "I did. It's my car, officer. My mother seems to think she has control over it and me." "It's my car. I'm your mother and you have to obey me. It's the law. Tell her, officers." "Actually, ma'am, there is no such law. Your daughter is an adult." "There most certainly is a law. I'm going to report you to your chief for not knowing it. I may even sue." "May I see the car registration and your license, please?" Emily hands them to him. "Ma'am, this car is registered in the name of your daughter and only your daughter. It's her car and you have no right to drive it." Entitled Aunt looks at the registration the officer is showing her and then snatches Emily's license from him and slams the door. The police officers look at each other for a moment and then shrug and ring the bell again. Entitled Aunt answers it, looking very smug. "Ma'am, I'm going to need you to return the license now." Entitled Aunt hands him the license that she has cut into several pieces. Now she can't drive because she doesn't have a license. She looks at Emily as though she just scored some odd victory. Then she finally notices me. Hacker, what are you doing here? Just trying to have a nice visit with my cousin. She has hated me for years. You need to leave. I didn't give you permission to visit. Where is your mother? I don't need your permission. My mother is not here. I can travel without her. Ma'am, you are under arrest for destruction of government property. Apparently, cutting up a valid license is a felony in some places. Who knew? And grand theft of this car. You can't arrest me. I'm her mother. I have rights. Yes, you do. He then reads them to her. The officer explains to us that until she destroyed the license, he had been willing to issue an appearance ticket. Then, instead of being arrested, she would just have had to appear in front of the judge and get a fine. This was a much bigger deal. Emily ran into the house to tell her father what had happened. We all chatted for a little bit until the phone rang. It was Entitled Aunt telling him to call their attorney. We left. I drove the car back to Emily's and took her to get her license replaced the next morning. The attorney called by my uncle apparently didn't know my aunt, and he showed up at the first hearing a week later to try and get it dismissed. It looked to be going her way at first. Her attorney said, Your Honor, this is a family matter. It's simply a case of a mother disciplining her child, and the child calling the police because her mother grounded her from using the car. The judge said, So she got mad and called the police, and she, not knowing that it was a crime to destroy the license, did so. Yes, Your Honor, that's pretty much it. Prosecutor, do you have nothing better to do today? The prosecutor said, No, Your Honor, I don't. I consider it rather important. When a 22-year-old woman has her car stolen, it doesn't matter who stole it. She has just as much of a right to justice as someone who has their car stolen by a stranger. 22? The victim is 22? Yes, Your Honor. The victim is a 22-year-old woman who is the sole owner of the vehicle in question. The mother became enraged at her daughter. She then went to her daughter's home, stole her car, and later destroyed her license. Your Honor, I was not aware of the age or living situation of the victim. I was under the impression that the child was a minor who resides with her parents. Entitled Aunt was sitting there still looking smug. Her attorney was sweating bullets. Entitled Aunt, do you realize that these are very serious charges, and if convicted, you face up to 8 years in prison? For what? I have the right to discipline my child as I see fit. She disobeyed me. She will think twice before doing it again. No, you don't. You have the right to discipline your child within the confines of the law. You have stepped outside of that parameter. You stole your daughter's car. I'm her mother. It's my right. It isn't really theft because she is my child and her property belongs to me by law. Where did you get your law degree? I don't have one. Then let me be the first to explain to you that your child is a legal adult. Period. You have no right of anything of hers without her express consent. Period. You may not take her car without her permission. Period. You may not enter her home without her permission. Period. Do you understand that? You don't know what you are talking about. I'm her mother. That gives me the right. I'm in charge. No, ma'am. I'm in charge. This case will be held over for trial. I went home a week later. Entitled Aunt eventually took a plea deal where she had 2 years probation and had to take parenting classes. The parenting classes were Mike's idea and the prosecutor thought it was great. We laughed hysterically over that because my cousin is an only child, lol. Emily and Mike married a year later and moved the heck away from there. This took place about 30 years ago. Entitled Aunt maintained for the rest of her life that the judges, there were 5 for different status hearings, didn't know what the heck they were doing, and she was right. Most entitled parents treat their kid like they're the second coming of Jesus. This special brand of entitled parents treats their kids like modern day slaves. This is classic rSlash raised by narcissist behavior. If you like this story, I recommend checking that sub out. Personally, I don't feel comfortable covering those stories on my channel because technically it's a support sub, so if you do visit, be respectful and lurk without making any posts, unless of course you were also raised by a narcissist. But there are some insane, nutso stories on that sub. Our next post is from Dragonsfire242. I work at my local supermarket. Obviously, we have all sorts of idiots and entitled buffoons come in, but this one clearly takes the cake. So this mother came up to my checkout lane and started putting stuff on the belt. Apparently, she decided to give her kid the box of Oreos she was buying, and he elected to tear through that stuff like there was no tomorrow. So she pulls it away from him. The situation ensues. Tony, put those down. She turns to me now with a half-eaten box. Oh, I'm sorry. Could I get a refund for these? Ma'am, you haven't bought those yet. Yes, I have, and I can't use them now. Can you give me a refund? Ma'am, you haven't bought them. Now you have to. That'll be $5, roughly. No, I bought these and now I want my money back. Now, I don't know if this was some god-awful scheme or if she was actually this stupid, but either way. Ma'am, I cannot give you a refund on a product you haven't bought. You'll give me a goddamn refund! At this point, she pulls out a taser and starts waving it in my direction. I hit the button to trigger the silent alarm. The cops are now on the way. Give me my goddamn refund, you idiot! Look, ma'am, I can go get the manager. Maybe he can help. Fine, go get the freaking manager. So I go back and get him, and he goes out and talks to her. I didn't hear what they said because I cowered in the office for fear of being tased, but the cop showed up after about 4 minutes and arrested her, so it was a heck of a Friday. Hey, look on the bright side, OP. At least she didn't point a gun at you. That was rSlash, and if you don't subscribe to my channel, I'm gonna tell every entitled parent on this subreddit that you insulted their precious little baby. Enjoy getting tased and then shot and then tased again.